hardware inside of your computer and the internet speed, or the internet upload speed, that is. So since I am unable to speak for everyone's hardware in their computers, we're just going to be looking at the internet speeds today. To check your internet speed, head over to a speed test website. I'm going to be running my speed test on speedtest.net to show you a setting that is actually pretty useful if you don't understand the speeds that well, because most speed test sites measure in megabits per second. However, most streaming programs like OBS use kilobits per second whenever it comes to setting bitrate, and converting from megabits to kilobits is not, difficult, but speedtest.net offers an option to measure the kilobits in the first place, so we don't have to mess with all of that. As you can see here, kilobits per second, or kbps. So what we will do is go ahead and pull up that website. And I've got mine up here, and I'm gonna have some of this stuff blocked out because I don't want you guys seeing my ISP's IP, obviously, or my IP from my ISP. And what we're gonna do is go ahead and click on the settings, and it will bring up an advanced menu. And then what we are going to do is, where it says speed, we're going to change from megabits per second to kilobits per second. And then after we have changed that, we're going to go ahead and click go and run our speed test. All right, so after my speed test, we can see that I pulled 11,495 kilobits per second on this speed test, and we need to cross-reference that with Twitch's standards for broadcasting. And this gives us a recommended bit rate for whichever FPS that's in resolution that we plan on streaming at. So if we wanted 1080p 60 FPS, we would need a consistent at least 6,000 kilobits per second, and 1080p 30 frames per second, 4,500 kilobits per second, and then 4,500 for 720p 60 FPS. And you could see that there. So go ahead and cross-reference the speeds that you get with the resolution that your computer supports, and then also the speed as far as bit rate, what we got from our speed test, and what you would be able to pull or be able to use inside of here. So after you've determined which resolution you are capable of streaming at by, the speeds from your speed test, what we will then do is take that speed and put it in here. So my internet speed was about 11,000 kilobits per second, which means I could definitely stream at 1080p 60 FPS, but I've currently have my settings set to 1080p 30 FPS. So if we go back to that website and we cross-reference that with 1080p 30 FPS, it recommends 4,500 kilobits per second. So what I will do is change this to 4,500 kilobits per second. So 4500, and that is what I need to set my bitrate to. Once again, reference that page. It is extremely useful. Next up is the encoder. If you have a NVIDIA graphics card, then you should see hardware NVENC, and there's a possibility you see hardware NVENC new. What I would suggest is, if you have the hardware NVENC or NVENC new, go ahead and use those. Those are going to help your computer hardware not be as bogged down from the recording and stuff of OBS. This is extremely useful if you're playing any video games, or if you have a lot of processing work going on for whatever you're recording or streaming. So that's definitely something I would recommend. If you don't have those options, software X264 is pretty good depending on what your hardware is in your computer. So just go ahead and try it if that's all you have. If you're an audio wizard and understand audio quite a bit, then adjust the bitrate as you see fit. But for most streams and most people recording, 160 is perfectly fine. Next is the recording settings. This, in my opinion, is way easier to explain and is easier to set up, specifically because you don't have to run, speed tests to figure out what your bitrate needs to be and things like that. And internet speed doesn't dictate anything here because it's saving to your computer. The recording path is going to be where your videos are saved to. So click browse and pick a place where you want your videos to be saved. Your recording quality, that specifies how compressed the video file sizes are, which the more compressed they are, the worse the video quality will be, but the smaller the video size, the file size will be. So, the more you go up, the larger the sizes are going to be, but the better the video is going to be. From my experience, indistinguishable quality, large file size, if you've got enough storage space, is really good because the file sizes are somewhat manageable and the quality is really, really good. If for some reason you wanted to specify what the bit rate is, if you're like, hey, my stream looks really good and I just want to record the same exact settings as my stream, you could set that here and it will pull the streaming bit rate and encoder options and things like that. The recording format is how it saves the video, the container that it saves it in. I suggest MP4 because it is just very, very widespread and is pretty much usable in any video editing program. The encoder is similar to the streaming option. If you have the option for hardware NVENC, select it. If you don't, software X264 is fine as well. We're not going to mess with any of the custom muxer settings, but if you are interested, click on this checkbox here to open up replay buffer. This allows you to set like a flashback recording similar to features on things like Xbox and PlayStation, where you can record like the last 30 seconds or last few minutes. You can set the time that you want to record here and then how much memory you're willing to allocate to that. This next section is probably one of my favorites, and that is hotkeys. Hotkeys allow you to assign specific keys or keyboard combinations to do certain actions. So for example, if we wanted to mute our mic, we'll go down here to our microphone and we wanted to mute it with the key combination of Shift plus F12. We can hold down Shift and then press F12 and it will assign this value to it. And then say we want to unmute with Shift plus F12 as well. We can do that and then we can click apply and then OK. And then now if I hold down Shift and F12 on my keyboard, you can see that it muted my microphone inside of this program. And if I press it again, it'll unmute it. And the really neat thing about these hotkeys is that you can assign them for a pretty much almost everything that's in here. You can set them for doing transitions, starting and stopping streams, pausing recordings, starting replay buffers, switching to scenes, muting your microphone, muting the desktop audio's microphone, or the desktop audio that is, and so much more. The advanced settings has a few things that I'd like to point out, while other things in here are a little more niche and aren't relevant to 99% of people. So I wanted to make that disclaimer before I skip over a few things in here. Starting first with process priority. This is kind of cool. It lets you essentially tell Windows how important your OBS recording or streaming is, and this can determine whether Windows allocates this more resources, depending on how the process priority is set. So if you were doing something really critical and you wanted to make sure this works at all costs, you could set this to a higher priority. But for the most part, if your computer is pretty decent for what you're doing, normal should work. The next thing I would look at inside of here would be the recording. This gives you modifiers for setting file name formatting, which is really cool because this helps you not delete files on accident, because you can know exactly when you recorded them just by looking at the file type, and